Let's review assigning values to variables in C++. First, we can assign a value to a variable when we declare the variable using an equal sign. Second, we can assign a value to a variable later in a program after declaring the variable using an equal sign. We can also assign a value using an equation and the equal sign. We can do a cout, cin combination to enter the value for a variable from the keyboard. And we can do file input to make sure that a variable has a specific value. Let's take a quick look at each of these. First, we can declare a variable, for example, float pi, and immediately make it equal to a value. So, float pi equals 3.14. That's the first way to assign a variable, a value in C++. Okay, let's look at the next. We could also declare a variable, for example, float pi, and then later assign a value to that variable, as in pi equals 3.14. Alright, we could declare a variable, as in float pi, and then we could assign a value with an equation. For example, pi equals 355.113. Next, we could declare a variable, float pi, and then use a cout, cin combination. The cout statement is the prompt. It tells the user what to enter. That way the program won't simply stop and wait for you to guess what's next. It'll tell you exactly what it expects you to do. So in this case, cout, enter a value for pi, and then later we would have cin pi. That way whatever value you entered from the keyboard would be entered for pi. Finally, we could declare a variable, float pi, and then later have a command called endfile, where we set up a keyword called endfile to read items from a file. It uses a very similar syntax to a cin statement. You'll have to look at the example for how we set up file reading, because there are other requirements and code lines that you'll need for that to work. Okay, so these are the 5 ways that we can assign values to variables in C++. Assign it when we declare it, assign it later with an equal sign and a value, assign it using an equation, assign it using a cout, cin combination, and finally assigning a value through file input. Alright, here's a review. Come back and look at this at any time.